All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. From Sportskeeda, TonyPauline is our guest today. Tony, how are you?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me. And if I refer to them as the Redskins on occasion, please pardon me because I'm old school and it's been tough to make that transition. Despite how many years has it been?
You'll have to put a quarter in the swear jar, Tony, for
There
the
you go.
Red.
Okay.
We're full blast into the draft right now, and we'll get to a bunch of the Commander stuff. But before we do, it's nice this year from our end not having to worry about quarterbacks. Not a great year for them. I am curious, though, how you currently have them slated, and how many you think end up going in the first round.
Well, I'll answer the first question. The second question first. I think only two go in the first round. I don't think Jackson Dart's going to be a first round pick. Maybe he's a late first round pick by a team at the top of round two who trades into the bottom of round one to get him, but he's not worth a first round pick. Right now, I got Cam Ward number one, far and away, then Shador Sanders, then Jackson Dart. I'm still very high on Quinn Ewers. He's done a lot of winning on the college level. I don't understand the hate for Quinn Ewers. I then have Jalen Milroe of Alabama, who physically is probably the top quarterback in this draft. But literally since the middle of the 2024 season, his passing has gone downhill. Riley Leonard, Kyle McCord of Syracuse, Tyler Shuck of Louisville, Will Howard of Ohio State. Those guys through the fifth round. Maybe Brady Cook of Missouri in the fifth round.
Of the quarterback needy teams, Tony, up at the top there, how do teams judge value? Like, it's not a great quarterback class, but we need one. And how do we turn down actual blue chippers like, say, Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter for the sake of hoping we get it right at quarterback this year? It's a tough business. How are teams treating it this year?
Yeah, I mean, each team treats it differently. You mentioned Abdul Carter. I've been in this game for a long time, and I remember in the 80s and the 90s when an impact defensive player like Abdul Carter really was coveted in the NFL draft. And now it's the quarterback because it's a quarterback league. And you have to have that quarterback. That's why quarterbacks have been overdrafted. That's why we've seen so many busts at the position: Zach Wilson's, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be interesting to see. You look at the Tennessee Titans, brand new front office, starting fresh. They can take Cam Ward. They've got time, because time is on their side. They can develop them. Then you look at a team that's selecting third, the New York Giants, who are in desperate need of a quarterback. Do the Giants take Shador Sanders with that pick, knowing that a year from now, their head coach, Brian Dable, and their general manager, Joe Schoen, not even a year from now, the end of the 2025 season, if they don't play well, if they're not competitive, they could be fired. And then you got Shador Sanders on your roster, and everybody's going to be screaming. If those guys are fired, you know who they're going to be screaming to be the head coach of the New York Giants. So it's an interesting dynamic at the top because you've got an organization in Tennessee with a brand new regime that's going to have time. And then two picks later, you have the New York Giants who have no quarterback, who are in desperate need of a quarterback. And if they don't win, the regime's going to be out on the street on the unemployment line. Are you going to put all your hopes on a rookie quarterback that's coming off really a poor season? It'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
And how does it's interesting? There's this notion where the owners should stay out and mind their business and let the GM do their job, but that is his business. He owns it. The owner is there for the foreseeable future, and so he's got at some point. I'm thinking of the Giants in particular. Like, say this group wants Shador Sanders, and the owner says, chances if there's a chance none of you are here next year, I'll take the blue chipper, the known blue chipper. And then of course the owner probably takes some heat for that. But isn't it his job to say, no, we're not going to take a dart throw on Shador Sanders when we've got Travis Hunter sitting there?
I think there's a fine line. The owner owns the team. He signs the check. Obviously, he's going to have a say. But as you know, in Washington, when the owner is too involved in the football decisions, and the owner's not qualified to make those football decisions, it leads to ruin. Now you have a new owner in Washington, and I wrote 2 stories about this last summer at Sportskeeda about how the attitude, the culture changed on a dime, and how people who would go to work in fear, looking over their shoulder, were now looking forward to the future because of the changing culture. But the owner doesn't get involved in the football decisions. I think it's also different when you talk about someone like the New York Giants, the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the owners basically made their chops in the NFL. They are a football family. They didn't buy their way into the league. So you would think that John Mara, who was basically reared, through his early years in the NFL, should have more football say or say and what happens with the football decisions than say a Daniel Snyder did, than say a Woody Johnson with the New York Jets does. Woody Johnson, who's not qualified to make any football decisions, but is making football decisions. That you see where that leads to ruin. So I don't think it's broad brush. Obviously, the owner is going to have the final say, but the owner has to know his limitations when it comes to football decisions and football, making his input as far as football is concerned. And I think you bring a great point. I mean, if I'm John Mara and I'm looking at the Giants, I look at the Giants situation. Am I going to let them select Shedeur Sanders and put all their hopes on Shedeur Sanders? Very risky proposition, not only for 2025, but moving forward as well.
Absolutely. Tony, you talked about Abdul Carter and how special of a player he is. The edge class in general just seems like a special class this year, which is fairly deep. I was curious, how many edge rushers do you anticipate coming off in the first round? How do you have them ranked? And who do you think will be around where Washington will be around 29?
Well, if I pull up my board right now, when you're talking about pure edge rushers, you're looking at Abdul Carter, Penn State, Jalen Walker, Georgia, another Georgia kid, Mikael Williams, James Pierce, Tennessee, going in the first round. I hope you're keeping count.
That's 4. That's 4. I got it.
Mike Green of Marshall in the first round. One of the Texas A&M kids will go in the first round, whether it's Scourton or Shamar Stewart. One of those two, probably Stewart, although I have Scourton graded a little bit higher. And then maybe you get a surprise pick. Maybe a JT Tuimoloau slides in. Maybe a Femi Oladideju, who I've written about a lot, slides into the late part of round 1. A lot of strange things happen in the late stages of round 1. But, like you said, it is a good class. I like Donovan Izuruka of Boston College. I don't grade him as a first rounder. He could also go in the first round.
Interesting. I feel like Shamar Stewart's so polarizing as well, right? I think I was listening to a Daniel Jeremiah report recently, and he talked about how there's players in the fall and there's players in the spring, right? There's great college tape, but there's also players that shine during the combine and so on and so forth. So I found that pretty interesting because Shamar Stewart didn't necessarily produce on the field, but he's shining during the combine and so on and so forth.
Well, it's not that he didn't necessarily produce. He didn't produce on the field. 1.5 sacks. And again, I wrote a story about this at the combine at Sportskeeda. And what I wrote about is when I talked to people about, how is this guy an Olympic type athlete, yet he only had 1.5 sacks. They said he can't change direction. He can't bend the edge. And they compared him to Vernon Gholston, for those of you who may remember Vernon Gholston.
I remember him,
early top 10 pick of the New York Jets, who, again, was an Olympic type athlete, but, had no production. Taylor Mays, you may remember the safety Taylor Mays. Different position, but similar situation. In the straight line, I mean, Taylor Mays was an Olympic-type athlete. He struggled moving 2 feet to his left or right, went in the second round, had a very mediocre career compared to what was expected of him if you just look at those testing numbers from the combine.
Got it. So I guess my follow-up question is, where do you see Washington at 29 then, right? Do you think a Mike Green or James Pierce falls to them? And I guess if they were to fall, it would potentially be quote-unquote character concerns. Does that bother you one way or another? Do you not necessarily – how do you sift through that in regard to character concerns, whether it's justifiable or not?
Well, I mean, it's more so with Green than I think it is with Pierce. Pierce is a tall, thin guy. He's incredibly athletic. I don't think he makes it to Washington selection. I would be surprised if he makes it to Washington selection. I think he's more of a true stand-up pass rusher, 3-4 outside pass rushing linebacker, if you will. I think if you put his hand in the ground, you're going to have a bit of a problem. I feel the same way about Mike Green as well. I mean, and Mike Green is 2 inches shorter than Pierce, which means he doesn't have the same amount of growth potential. I think that Mike Green is going to be, early on anyway, a liability against the run. I mean, I know everyone talks about that play at the Senior Bowl with Josh Connerly, but it was more a bad play by Connerly than it was, which Green took advantage of, than it was a great play by Mike Green, if you really look at it. I think the off-the-field issues will be bigger. You've got to look at it. Each team is going to look at it differently. Does this guy fit our locker room? Does this guy fit our culture? That's why I talked about potentially Femi Oladeju of UCLA being a surprise pick for the Commanders in the bottom of round one, because he fits that culture. I got to sit with him and talk with him. Not just a great football player, he's an outstanding human being. He's very inquisitive. He's really smart. And people watch the tape. People talk about the character issues. You have to be able to absorb that system. You have to know what your responsibilities are in the system, what your assignments are in that specific system, in order for a team to really be comfortable with you. I don't know either way what the Commanders think about Green or Pierce, but I can tell you when it comes to Oladeju, I mean, there is a lot to like there between the ears.
Hey, Doug, let me do one more quick one if you don't mind. So, we had Logan Paulson, the former Redskins tight end. He was gleaming about Oladeju when he was on the show, UCLA grad. Thought he was a high-character player.
Yeah.
My follow-up question to you is, Mike Green, I find his tape to be awesome. I love watching him. I love his first step. Do you have any concerns with the fact that he played at Marshall, maybe not necessarily the highest competition, or do you think he has transferable skills?
No, because he played well at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he showed a lot of those pass rush skills against the top competition at the Senior Bowl. So, the overriding answer would be no. But again, my concern about Mike Green, I agree with you about the first step, the speed off the edge, the ability to bend, is, what happens when he's going up against a 320-pound guy and it's 3rd and 2 and they're running in his direction. I mean, is he going to get obliterated at the point of attack, or is he going to be able to hold the point or make the play, or, occupy the blockers to allow linebackers to make plays? That's my concern about Mike Green right now.
Got it.
Were you surprised, Tony, at the trade that the Commanders were able to make for Tunsil? Were you surprised at the compensation, and does that preclude them from going tackle in the first round if one falls to them that they like?
Yeah, I was shocked. I couldn't believe Houston made that trade with a guy like C.J. Stroud. I thought it was, as we say in the draft world, it hasn't been said in years. I don't know if it's politically incorrect anymore, but manna from heaven for the Commanders. I mean, that does a couple things for the Commanders. You now have a terrific starting left tackle and Larry Tunsil. You can now move Brandon Coleman around, maybe at guard if you need him, maybe at right tackle if you need him. I thought it was a stroke of brilliance by the Commanders, and they've had several of those strokes of brilliance, in the past, really since Josh Harris has bought the team. So I thought it was a brilliant move. I'm still wondering why the Texans would make a move like that. As far as I think the bigger issue as far as the Commanders are concerned is there a tackle there at the bottom of round one that is really worthy of that pick? I mean, the only guy that I see possibly there is Jonas Savanea of Arizona. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? I don't know that, does it preclude them? No, not 100%, but there better be a real damn good guy there for them to go in that direction, someone that they value higher than the potential edge rushers that are available to them.
Two of the safeties in this class that I really like are kind of a test study to me in a high floor versus a high ceiling, and that's Malachi Starks and Emmanuel. I'm sure I said that wrong.
Right.
But where do you see those two prospects, and is the floor versus ceiling debate a thing here, or are they closer than we give credit for?
Well, I mean, it is with a guy like Emmanuel because he's such a great athlete, but he's also a good player. I would just think about what I said about Shamar Stewart, about how he wasn't able to transition that athletic skill onto the football field into production. Emmanuel, you watch the film the past 2 years, and he's been a real good player at South Carolina. He's a guy who's fast in a straight line as well as laterally. He's explosive. He's got decent ball skills. I don't think he's a liability if you place him over a slot receiver. Granted, it may be a little bit tough at 220 pounds for Amenawari to cover a guy that's 190 pounds if you place him over the slot receiver, especially with such an emphasis put on route running as opposed to, say, vertical speed these days in the NFL. So he's got a huge amount of ceiling. I also like Malachi Starks a lot, not the athlete of Amenawari, but more polished in his ability to play free safety, more polished in his, ball skills, more polished in his ability to play over the slot receiver. So while, say, Starks doesn't have the same upside of Amenawari, I don't think he has the same downside as well. I think he's being a little bit disrespected at this point in time. He was probably overrated when you saw a lot of the mock drafts during the 2024 season, but I think now he's kind of being a bit underrated because of the fact that Amenawari just had, what he run a 4.4 or a 4.38 or whatever it was at the combine, and everybody, gets all flushed over that.
Tony, I think Washington's needs are running back, cornerback, and I believe running back, cornerback, and edge, right? What I'm trying to think of is what is the best value in regard to draft picks, right? Let's assume Washington takes an edge rusher at 29. I know the running back class is deep. Do you see the wide receiver class being deep as well, potentially going into the third round, or not so much?
Wide receiver or cornerback?
Oh, sorry, cornerback, please. Sorry, cornerback
right.
and wide receiver. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the cornerback class is not a good one. I mean, there's questions at the top. There's not good depth. You may be able to come out of the round 2 with a good cornerback. Azariah Thomas of Florida State did not run well at his pro day. Had him in the mid 4.5s, although he's a good player. Jacob Parrish of Kansas State. I mean, if somehow one of those injured cornerbacks, whether it be Benjamin Morrison of Notre Dame, falls down to Washington in the second round, which I don't think it's going to happen, maybe you jump on them, but it's going to be, you got a better chance of getting a much, much better or highly rated running back in the second or third round than you do cornerback.
And I guess the follow-up wide receiver, how do you feel about that? Is there a potential good one in the second or third round? I feel like we have a couple. Luther Burden's I'm seeing fall off boards a little bit. It's fun coming down a little bit, but I don't know how high you are on him. Third round potential.
Well, Luther Burden's not going to the third round.
I know that. Yeah.
I mean, I think Luther Burden is a lot like Malachi Starks. He was overrated in and out of the scouting community coming into the season and through the season. Now people are starting to cool on him. I don't agree with it. I think he's still going to go first round. In fact, I wrote a story. It was posted Saturday. Notes from Missouri Pro Day, where people are saying anywhere from 15 to 25 right now for Luther Burden, which I would agree with. I mean, it depends. Is Ayer Maynor of Stanford available to the Commanders late in round 2? Possibly. And you get in the round 3, Dante Thornton of Tennessee, a guy I absolutely love. You want to talk about a high ceiling guy? Jaden Higgins, a bigger bodied possession type guy. Those guys may or may not be available to Washington where they sit in the third round, assuming they don't trade up. Kyle Williams of Washington State, I think, is a guy that's going to go much earlier than people project. People talk about Matthew Golden. Kyle Williams has the same size. He ran a 4.4 as opposed to the 4.29. Okay, so he's not just, but he's much more polished. He's a much better route runner. He's a much more consistent receiver. He comes away with the contested throw. He's got a head for the position. I mean, you'll have a chance at a solid wide receiver late in day 2, but you can come around, day 3. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Trey Harris, Kieran Lacy, who's got a lot of off the field issues dealing with right now. Andrew Armstrong, both kids from Arkansas. Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Tesla are going to be available on day 3, and those guys are legitimate NFL players.
Is the stuff with Ted McMillan, is this just like draft fatigue, or are you concerned with some of the measurables?
Which measurables are you talking about? Are you talking about the 40 time?
The 40 time, and also he came in with the arm shorter, the length I've heard people talking about. I'm just curious how a guy that felt like a top 10 player a month ago, I'm seeing in the bottom half of mock drafts nowadays.
I think that's insane. I think I've said that Ted McMillan is basically Calvin Johnson without the speed. He is a game controlling receiver that opponents knew the ball was going to be thrown to him. They couldn't stop him. I'm looking at him. His arms were 31 and a half inches long, okay, but his arms were 31.5 inches, but his hands were 10 inches, but he's also 6'4", which gives him an advantage. No, I think people read too much into that. He ran in the 4.55s. It was reported at 4.48. It was a 4.55, which is what he is on film. He's just, in my opinion, he's a top 10 pick. I think the Raiders, who need a dominant number one receiver, look in his direction. Anything outside the top 10, he's, in my opinion, he's great value. And no legitimate person I've spoken to has him falling out of the top 15. I mean, not the fastest guy in the world, but like I said, you watch, especially last year when Arizona did not have a good team and the opponents knew that the ball was going his way and they couldn't stop him.
As it feels like the NFL is moving back a little bit to more of a running game, as you've seen, as the backfields get smaller on defense to kind of work for. We're now seeing that. Does the GM, TonyPauline, have a problem taking premier running backs in the first round? And I say this more about positional value, like, you're going to have to pay DNs in the league after their first contract humongous money. Wide receivers, corners, humongous money. Are you doing yourself a disservice by taking running backs and tight ends in the first round?
Not if they're going to help you win. And you're right. I mean, the league is always changing. Like I said at the start, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where an impact defensive player like an Abdul Carter would be coveted as the first pick of the draft. Well, now it's a quarterback who's not as good a player or prospect as Abdul Carter. So it's not unusual to see, as you said, nickel backs are now starters on depth charts, and linebackers, where in the past they were 255, 245 pounds. Now you're seeing 220-pound linebackers. Well, how do you overcome that? You get a bigger ball carrier, or you get a guy who can run over a 220-pound linebacker. My answer is no. If they're going to help you win, take you to the next level, which I think a guy like Ashton Genty would do for the Chicago Bears, like Jahmyr Gibbs did for the Detroit Lions. You can go back, even some of the guys, Leonard Fournette, when they were taking off, helped those teams get to the next level. They didn't have a lot of staying power, but they helped those teams get to the next level. I have no issue with it at all.
A guy like Amarian Hampton at 29.
I mean, if they feel that way, I have Amarian Hampton as a second round prospect. I don't have a first round grade on him. I could see why teams would like him with that size, with that speed, with the game film where every time he touched the ball, he would just pick up positive yards. You're giving away a bit on the outside running game. So if your game plan is to basically just pound it between the tackles, between the numbers, and not ask your running back to turn the perimeter, then I could see a guy like Amarian Hampton end of round one.
I was going to follow up with that as well. So with the running back class, it seems like Amarian Hampton is pretty much consensus number 2 overall. And if you agree with that, do you find that there's going to be multiple running backs coming off of the first round? Because over the past couple of years, it hasn't been the trend. But I'm seeing Ashton Genty going as high as 6 to the Raiders. I don't know if you agree with that at all either. Kind of curious for your thoughts on the running back class and where they go in the first round.
Well, I mean, the only other running back I think that could go first round is Amarian Hampton. Okay. I like Caleb Johnson a lot. The 4.57 at the combine is a little bit disconcerting, but he plays fast.
Over Henderson?
I'm sorry?
Over Travion Henderson?
I do. I think that because Caleb Johnson is more of your feature runner. I mean, I think Quinshawn Junkins is also more of a feature runner. As I said to somebody in the league that I spoke to last week, I said, what I think is going to happen is Quinshawn Junkins is going to be drafted over Travion Henderson. But in the end, Travion Henderson, if he stays healthy, he does have some medical issues from the past, could turn out to be the better running back because he's able to do more. He's more of a perimeter runner. He's a terrific pass catcher. He's fast. He's a big play, explosive guy. But overall, if you want that interior violent running of style, say like the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to lean more towards the Quinshawn Junkins. I mean, the good thing about this running back class is, you got the complete backs like an Ashton Genty's, you got the interior runners like the Hamptons, Caleb Johnsons, the Quinshawn Junkins, you got the Trevor Etiennes and the Travion Hendersons of the world that can basically pick and choose and create their spots on the inside. They can turn the corner. They're outstanding pass catchers out of the backfield. You got a guy like Dylan Sampson, who is an exceptional pass catcher. He's got great speed. He's just got to really develop his game. Biashel Tootin of Virginia Tech, I think, is a woefully underrated back who's got decent size. He's got tremendous speed, played on a bad ankle last year, but he's got a lot of ability as well.
What about the kid from SMU, Smith?
I have him rated much lower. He's a little bit smaller. Yeah, he's fast, but he needs room to operate. He needs an open hole. Has the ability to turn the corner. More of a one-year guy. I think he gets drafted, but I think there are better backs than him.
If the Commanders wait till that 4th round area to pick a running back, who do you like in that range?
Again, this Biashel Tootin go. Well, you're talking late 4th round. So, LaQuint Allen of Syracuse, big, strong downhill ball carrier who was an exceptional pass catcher out of the backfield. An exceptional pass catcher out of the backfield. Once you get into that 4th round area, you're looking more at situational type backs. Kyle Manegi of Rutgers, R.J. Harvey of Central Florida. We're talking 4th, 5th round now. Jarquez Hunter of Auburn, or guys say like Jaden Blue who have great upside but really need to develop their game. So once you get outside, Jordan James of Oregon, I think he's going to go late 3rd round. Could he last late 4th round? Possibly. He didn't run all that well for his size, but the film. You see a violent, explosive runner who can run on the inside or turn the corner.
You mentioned Travis Etienne. Where do you think his range is, and what does the league think about him?
Well, I think the league thinks he probably should have stayed in school one more year to develop his game. Yeah. I'd be shocked if he makes it out of day 2. I right now have him as a 2nd round choice. He is an incredibly elusive guy. When on his game, he is tough to stop. He creates yardage. He makes defenders miss. Only 5'8.5", but a stout 198 pounds. He can run through tackles. He's got good speed, outstanding pass catcher out of the backfield. It may be a situation with Etienne where you may not see the best of Travis Etienne for 2 years down the road.
Tony, is there a position group that maybe is underrated? We keep hearing about the running back class, the edge class. I know you put in the work. Is there one potential group where, okay, you know what? I think people aren't talking about them enough.
I think the defensive tackle class is good literally through day 3. You got your Mason Gray, you got the Michigan guys, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant at the top, Walter Nolan, who I like a lot, Tyreek Williams of Ohio State, who I like a lot. But when you get into, the middle part of day 3, you also have a lot of good players. They're situational guys. You've got 3 technique types like Cameron Horsley of Boston College, Aeneas Peebles of Virginia Tech, Peyton Page of Clemson. But you also have a Nazir Stackhouse of Georgia. That's a big-bodied mauler, that punch you in the face type of guy. Savion Jones of LSU, who played defensive end at LSU, 6'5.5", 280 pounds. When they put him on the inside during Senior Bowl practices, he was really terrific. Yahya Black is another guy from Iowa, big-bodied, athletic guy. As far as I'm concerned, never really reached his potential. If the light goes on for Yahya Black, you can hit a home run in day 3. I also like the guard position. Now, the thing about the guard position is how many of these college tackles are going to be guards at the next level? Is Kelvin Banks a tackle, or is he a guard? Is Josh Connerly a tackle, or is he a guard? Is Gray Zabel, who played tackle at North Dakota State, is he a tackle or is he a guard? Marcus Bowe of Purdue, another guy. I do like the guard position a lot, even in day 3. Caleb Johnson, another guy who was a terrific tackle at Texas Tech, looks like he's going to be a real good guard. Jalen Rivers of Miami of Florida was a terrific tackle for the Hurricanes. Looks like he's going to be an excellent guard. Clay Webb of Jacksonville State, who's had a heck of a lead up to the draft, looks like he's going to be good. So I think you can get some good guards, as you usually can, in day 3 of the draft, although there's talent at the top.
Is it just me, or is that happening more where it's harder to find tackles because the college tackles are all projecting to guards?
Well, it depends on the measurables as well as athleticism. But, you can get away with a 6'3", tackle on college on Saturday, but it doesn't project all that well to Sunday. Will Campbell, real tall, terrific offensive left tackle at LSU. His arms are just over 32 and a half inches. How is that going to work on Sunday? So I think with projecting college tackles to guard in the NFL, it depends on measurables. It also depends on athleticism. I mean, if you get a right tackle in college who was good on Saturday, but doesn't have the athleticism or the movement skills, or it's just, as I always say, a small area blocker, you may have to move him into guard. And the other thing is this is, people talk about quarterbacks all they want. As far as I'm concerned, the left tackle position is as vital in the NFL as any position there is, because if you can't protect your quarterback, assuming he's a right-handed passer, it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is, and there's always a premium on that position.
Get you out of here on this one. I'm just curious your thoughts. Would you, with the Commanders, move Brandon Coleman over to right tackle or leave him at left guard next to Tunsil?
I'd try both. I mean, I'd try him at right tackle, see how he does. I mean, he's a bigger guy. He's athletic. That's why I projected him at the beginning. But he's also, he's got good movement skills. So I would try and start him at right tackle. I try both. I mean, that's why I thought, as I said at the beginning, the trade for Laramie Tunsil was terrific because it gives them options with Brandon Coleman. Why nail it down to just one spot? Try him at both. You've got, almost 2 months of camp before the season begins. You got 3 preseason games. Try him at right tackle, which is a more critical position. If it doesn't work out, or if Wiley's playing better, move him inside the guard. See what you got there.
Tony, this was fantastic today. We really appreciate you giving us some of your time. I know you're super busy this time of year.
Thanks for having me again. Good luck to the Commanders. They've done a great job there. I wrote about it. They've done a great job. Everyone talks about Jaden Daniels. He's just a piece of the puzzle. They brought the right people in. They're making the right moves. I'd be very excited if I was a Commanders fan right now.
Thank you, buddy. We are.
Thanks, Tony.
Good talk to you. Thanks.
Take care.